Said good morning earlier to Chief Okonkwo, so good morning again.
Good morning.
Morning, guys. How are you today?
Great, thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Prof.
Morning.
Hello, everybody. My name is Cindy Foster, and as the Principal Managing Partner of Avaero Capital Partners, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to today's session. High airfares, are Nigerian airlines really the problem? Today's town hall is focused on identifying the needs to what needs to change to improve domestic airfare outcomes in Nigeria. We will start by surfacing current assumptions about fares, test these assumptions against market realities, and then explore from each stakeholder's perspective what practical shifts could move outcomes in a better direction. The goal is not blame, but to make progress grounded in how the system actually works. We will then open the floor for audience questions at 11:15. Thank you very much, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to introduce you to my co-host, Dr. Alex Nuba. Dr. Nuba is President of Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, OAPA, Nigeria, and a long-standing advocate for improved aviation safety, economics, and operational accountability. He brings an industry-wide perspective on structural constraints affecting Nigerian aviation. You will be hearing from Alex shortly. First, I'd like to introduce the panel. First up, we've got Mr. Wale Shadare. Mr. Shadare is an aviation analyst, journalist, and a publisher of Aviation Metric. He covers airline economics, regulation, and market performance across Nigeria and West Africa. Next up, we've got Dr. Yinka Fulami, National President of the Nigerian Association of Nigerian Travel Agents, NANTA, or National Association of Nigerian Travel Agents, that should be, and Chief Executive, Travel and Logistics Centre Limited. Dr. Fulami is representing travel agents who sit directly between airline pricing and passenger demand. Next up, we've got Professor Obiora Okonkwo. Professor Okonkwo is the spokesperson for the Airline Operators of Nigeria, commonly known as AON, and Chairman of United Nigeria Airlines, representing domestic airline operators in Nigeria. And then we've got Mr. Michael Achimugu. Mr. Achimugu is the Director of Public Affairs and Consumer Protection at the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority, responsible for consumer engagement and regulatory communication. And then, not last but least, we've got Mr. Louis Odion. Mr. Odion is the Executive Commissioner of the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission, FCCPC, and will bring a consumer protection and competition policy perspective to the discussion. So as you can see, we've brought today a very high-powered, high-hitting, high-level panel. So hopefully you'll be able to ask some very educated questions to them later. But now I'll hand you over to Dr. Alex Nuba, who will be speaking about airfares in context with affordability, purchasing power, amongst other things. And whilst he's getting himself ready, I'm going to set up a poll as well, and we'll look at the results of that at the end. So please bear with us. Hopefully, Alex, you've got.
Yes, I have. I'm trying to load.
Yeah, that's fine. Whilst you're doing that, I will get to the poll.
Can you see me now?
Not yet.
Okay. Can we see now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, co-panelists. I have 5 minutes to speak to this subject, and I will try to do that as effectively as I can within the allocated time frame. So what I will be speaking to is called, one second, please. I'm trying to set myself up still. I'll be speaking to the issue of affordability and passenger decline in Nigerian aviation. I use that word cautiously. And so basically, the first point I want to make is that airfares are not driven by costs, not distance. Airfares are driven by cost, not by distance or time. And this is is that slide changing? Is my chart, are we on the same, how airfares are built slide?
No, it hasn't moved.
Okay, sorry, I am on.
If you're on two screens, I find that sometimes.
That's exactly what's going on. So let me
that's.
Let me kill one screen now. Are we on 1 second? Did you lose my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, 1 second. Okay, I will reshare again. So sorry, my time. I hope I get it 1 minute extra. Am I back up now?
No. Now you are.
Okay, thank you. So basically, I'll go back to say that this presentation provides the updated analysis on affordability and decline in aviation in Nigeria, highlighting the structural cost issues and recommendations. I say updated because I've been pushing for data from the relevant authorities. It was just yesterday that FAN was able to present me with data. So I start by saying airfares are driven by cost to produce a seat, not by distance, not by distance, essentially. That's what people tend to argue, that we're flying to the places, same distance, we're paying more. While airline price for survival and key cost components, which include fuel, lease, maintenance, and airport charges. Next slide. So Nigeria's aviation cost structure is very unique, with fuel accounting for 38% of total cost, followed by lease and maintenance, and these high costs drive up airfares. Here is a figure of an average airline seat cost and would vary by airline. So the components obviously are what I have just described. You forgive me for going through very quickly. So the typical 737 flight from Lagos to Abuja costs about $9,000 with 162 seats. I use that number to lower the figures just slightly. That's a low-cost model. This translates to about 77,000 to 84,000 naira per seat, requiring fares above 100,000 to be sustainable. And that's the key word. This helps to deepen the understanding of the low-cost carrier. That's why I used that number of seats, where their aircraft seat capacity is increased to reduce the cost per mile and add revenue, and they add revenue from ancillaries, and not what we call LCC in our current environment, where we have smaller aircraft with smaller seat numbers. So what you're looking at now is the 2022 to 2025 passenger data from FAN. FAN harmonizes its data, meaning it goes to the various agencies, Bureau of Statistics and other collectors of data, NCAA, to harmonize their data. And this is the data from 2022 to 2025. And what it tells us is there's been a decline in domestic travel, while international travel remains resilient, which basically reflects the affordability pressures at home. I will show that to you in further slides. So you can see numbers through. I got information that 2025 figures were higher, but FAN data did not show that. It continued to show a downward slide in passenger data. So I'm the only one that probably has 2025 data because I got it just yesterday. So the other thing that impacts reduction in seat availability also raises cost. So grounded aircraft delays reduce seat availability and increase cost. Airport capacity issues and cancellations hurt revenue, while fixed costs persist. The airlines fixed costs will remain regardless of what happens in the field, which also contribute to raising cost. So if you look at the chart above, you can see, okay, the next chart basically. So what I have done in this chart is to show the cost versus the revenue model that exists in the Nigerian market. So we have a cost average over 100 naira and a revenue just slightly above that. So what that shows is our cost per seat kilometer is about 104 naira, while our revenue per seat kilometer is about 112 naira. This leaves a margin of only 8 naira per kilometer. In aviation, this is dangerously thin. Any delay, any grounded aircraft, any fuel spike, even a small drop in load factor immediately pushes up CASM above RASM, turning the flight into a loss. That is why our airlines struggle, not because of pricing decisions or intentions to gouge customers, but because the structural cost base is extremely high. So the next thing is I take you to show you what is called the load factor sensitivity. What this slide shows is how dramatically airline profitability changes with load factor. Load factor is simply the percentage of seats filled on a flight. Because airline costs are fixed for each flight, fuel, crew, maintenance, airport charges, the cost per seat only makes sense when those seats are actually occupied. And so I show you what happens at 80%. You have a price about 120 naira. When it drops to 70%, your revenue drops to about 128 naira. We drop to 112 naira. So very thin margins. And when it drops to 60%, the revenue falls to 96 naira, and this is below its cost. So of 104 naira, at this level, airlines start to lose money on every seat flown. And because the cost of operating the flights don't change, the losses accumulate very quickly. The next thing is what I call a fleet reduction, what I call the outbound and return factor sensitivity. So what typically happens, and this is when Nigerians complain and say, oh, fares are too high in December and airlines are gouging us. The truth of it is that during Christmas, Lagos and Abuja to the southeast flights are full, but the return flights are nearly empty. When outbound load factor is 95%, as we indicated, but the return load is 35%, the combined load factor is only 65%. At this level, the average revenue barely covers the cost. That is why airlines raise outbound fares, because they are compensating for the weak return leg. After Christmas, this pattern flips and the expense direction becomes southeast to Lagos and Abuja. Then the George Oresi of Ibom Air raised the issue recently that fleet size is extremely important to lowering costs. So small airline operations, cost will result in higher fares, just as lower seat numbers will also raise fares. Fleet size is one of the most important determinants of cost. When airlines operate fewer airlines, their fixed costs do not fall proportionally. Instead, these costs are spread across fewer seats and fewer flights, which push costs upwards. In Nigeria, grounded aircraft, maintenance delays, financing constraints have all reduced available fleets, causing costs to rise by as much as 20%. This is a structural issue. Without scale, airlines cannot achieve the unit cost efficiency needed to offer affordable fares. Affordability is also a major challenge in this industry. Fares have risen faster than incomes. We know what has happened to promised incomes versus real incomes. And what that has done is reduce demands. And so higher fares lead to fewer passengers, especially in the domestic market. That's why you see that pattern of drop over the years in the domestic market, because there are alternatives to travel domestically. You cannot take a bus to Japan if that case arises. So if we compare to other economies, a country like Nigeria has higher costs due to FX volatility, imported maintenance, and heavy charges, while you have India and Kenya benefit from subsidies and stable policies. We talk about UDAN, and we have to understand what UDAN has done, which is to create a viability gap funding. The Indian government has taken the imperative to bridge the cost between fares and affordability. That is one key area we need to look at in Nigeria. So, strategic recommendations would be to adopt a hub and regional model which reduce charges, increase aircraft availability, and form expert advisory councils. Aviation is one of the most technical sectors in any economy. Decisions about safety, economics, fleet strategy, airport development, and regulations cannot be made on intuition or political instinct. They require deep technical expertise. Nigeria currently lacks a permanent expert advisory mechanism, which is why policies often shift from one administration to the next. Countries with strong aviation sectors rely on strong expert councils to guide long-term strategies. Establishing such structures in Nigeria would reduce policy risk, improve regulatory predictability, and help government avoid costly mistakes. Expert advisory is not optional. It is foundational to the modern aviation system. I conclude by saying, I hope I stayed within my time, Nigeria's domestic aviation decline is affordability driven. A system design is essential to lower cost and stimulate demand through scale and connectivity. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you very much. Whilst you were talking, I was actually trying to launch the poll, but for some bizarre reason, it is not allowing me to launch it. So before we move to the panel, can we just have like a show of numbers in the question and answer? If you think the primary driver for domestic airfares in Nigeria is airline pricing decisions, put a 1 in the chat. If you think it's operating costs, fuel, FX maintenance, put a 2 in the chat. If you think it's capacity and competition, put a number 3 in the chat. If you think it's government charges, taxes, and fees, put a number 4 in the chat. If it's other, put a number 5 in the chat. Or if you believe it's a combination of all of those, put a number of 6. And we'll come back and look at those a bit later. So thank you, Alex, for your insightful affordability context and some background into the aviation. We're slightly behind time, but I think we're okay. And it's actually questions over to you, Alex.
Okay, 1 second, please.
Or do you want me to take the first one?
Please take the first one while I put back my...
Yeah, okay. So this is a question to all the panelists, and please let me welcome you again. It's a real pleasure to have you today. So, but before we go into individual perspectives, I'd just like each of you to just give me sort of 1 to 2 minutes about where you each believe responsibility for domestic fare outcomes primarily sits today. And then we'll compare with what the audience said. Thank you very much. I will go to, let's see who I will go to first. I will go to, I'll go to Professor Okonkwo. You're on mute. Let me. You're on mute. Okay, whilst we're figuring that out, I will go to.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
you're
Thank
there.
you, Cindy.
Okay.
Thank you, Cindy, and hello, panelists. Still, I don't know what magic you've done. Cindy else is looking so brighter than mine. You know, I'm looking like just one kind of a guy on the screen. So thank you. Thank you, Doc, for the presentation. Cindy, I really think that do we really need a poll to decide or to know what contributes to the cost of airfare? These things are standard. The cost of operation that are applied in Nigeria is similar to cost of operation that are applied in other parts of the world, which are Jet A1, maintenance. If you have your aircraft to be maintained as per cycles, as per calendar, these are strictly OEM affair. There's no maintenance system that is designed for Nigeria operators. These things remain constant and are very, very expensive. So I really think that we still maintain that the cost of airfare in Nigeria is mainly because of cost of operation multiple charges that come in there, high interest rate. It can never be adjusted simply because of low income for the citizens. Yet some people, I've seen some places where they argue that their salary is below 100,000 naira per month, and it would take them, for the rest of their life to level to save to buy an airfare ticket. That's okay. It's really unfortunate, but we really have nothing much to do about the salary. We would wish that airfare come lower because, like the presenter had said, Doc has said, we don't just, that individual cost you pay for your individual ticket is not what I see in my own inventory as an operator. Because at the end of the day, we use yield management. And in that yield management, you also put the cost of empty seat, which is disposable, kind of product in aviation. If you don't work it out properly, then you are not doing your mathematics and economics properly. So far, operational costs remain high, interest rates remain high, the airfare in Nigeria will continue to be higher. However, comparatively, we fly as much as many people do in most part of the world. I still think that even for what we go through, and because we are very sensitive to the cost of living in Nigeria, we do as much as possible to reduce and not to go overboard with our fare. So we just pray there will be no factor additionally that will bring about for that spike. I tell you, for instance, it's very costly to procure equipment. If you had gone to your bank to borrow like 100 billion naira at, let's say, a favorable interest rate of 30%, it could be more. We are talking about a flat interest, just interest on the 100 billion naira per month at 30 billion naira, and not in the minimum of 30 billion. Spread 30 billion per month is about 2.5 billion naira only to your bank. This is, they add up because you have to build them in the course of your operation. So the good thing that has happened to the aviation industry is because the industry is deregulated. So you have to choose their course as per your operational expenses. And then you leave the choice to the traveler to buy or not to buy. Thank you.
Okay. Next panelist, thank you very much for that. It's a shame that we didn't get a chance to ask the question before Alex did his speech, because I think what the audience would have said would have been a bit different given by what we've been hearing recently. So let's go to Wale, your answer to what you believe, please.
Thank you so much, Cindy. And thank you for putting this up with Dr. Alex. This is one question. I also want to greet the panelists because it's not easy to get Professor Obiora to be on this panel and other very busy executives. But be that as it may, you ask a question, who is to be blamed for airfares? I say the airlines, the government, and everything that has to do with aviation has to be blamed for this. If we look at the aviation industry globally, we will find out that possibly the government is not even taking the aviation industry seriously, and maybe rightly so too, in the sense that it is not the most important sector in Nigeria. If you look at what aviation contributes to the Nigeria GDP is just 0.7, that's 2.5 billion naira, $2.5 billion. It was $1.7 billion in 2014. I think there's an increase to that, which is a very, very good one. And it shows how remarkable and how resilient the aviation industry is. And take it back to the UK, and the aviation industry in Nigeria contributes about 216,000 jobs. Then you take it to the UK. The UK aviation industry contributed 25 billion naira to the UK economy annually, creating 620,000 jobs. We dare not talk about the US. The aviation contribution to US GDP is about $1.45 trillion dollars, which is very significant. And that is the reason the US is regarded as the biggest aviation market. Then if we take it back to Egypt, the Egyptian aviation contributed 3.5 billion naira dollars to the Egyptian economy. South Africa 5.7, Ethiopia 4.2. And when you look at it, especially Ethiopia, we look at Ethiopia. Ethiopia, to my own understanding, does not have a very strong domestic aviation. It does well internationally. So that perhaps probably makes the government not to take aviation seriously. But if I may ask, before you go into this business, there are so many other things you must have looked at. We have been talking about this for more than 25 years since I joined the industry, and we seem to be saying, we all know all these things Dr. Alex reeled out, and we also are also very conversant with what Professor Obiora listed. But the truth of the matter is, what are we going to do? And I'm actually excited that the government people, Mr. Chimugu is on this panel. I know they've done remarkably well on passenger complaints. And on the records, over 1 billion naira compensation was made towards the last quarter of last year. These are all the problems. How do we tackle them? At times, it becomes very rhetoric. We come here, we discuss the same thing all over and all over again. Have we really engaged government on what to do? There's no way. Yes, we all know these problems, but there's no way you're going to increase fares that will make passengers, continue to fly. Yes, I know the airlines have their own issue. We cannot deny it. I can tell you 60% of the problems are not from the airline, but the airlines also need to do their homework very well. You look at maintenance, there's no way any Nigerian airline can be profitable without having its own MRO. And I'm quite excited with what Airpeace is doing. And I hope that Airpeace will speed this up. It's something that we continue to talk about. It's something we continue to debate. Something must give. If you charge airlines, passengers 500,000 naira from Lagos to Abuja, yes, you may be right. You may be looking at your cost of operation. Something will definitely give. And that is why I'm not actually surprised when I saw the figure that the domestic airline has dwindled by over 25%. And if care is not taken with this new tax policy that we reintroduce VAT, 7.5% VAT, I tell you, is going to be more dire for the aviation industry. I think I'm so excited that the government people are here. They will listen and they will take the feedback to the government. The airlines also need to do their own part. I understand what they go through, but something has to be done, and urgently too. Let me quickly, I'm sorry, I'm taking your time.
You'll have a chance to speak, Wale. Okay. This was meant to be 1 minute to just give your...
Just 1 minute, I'll wrap up so that I can give others the opportunity. I traveled last week to Anambra State, Oba, and I discovered that a lot of people are really taking to road travel, and it's becoming more convenient. This government is very big on infrastructure. The roads are being constructed. I tell you, by the time these roads are fixed, Shagam to Asaba, I'm telling you, a lot of people will continue to take to road travel. And where does that leave our airline? So we equally need to look at volume. We also need to look at what we can do on their own part to be sustainable. There's price elasticity. To what end can passenger? The economy is a function of airfare is a function of the economy. The ability to fly is a function of the economy. So I'm not blaming the airline totally, but I think we need to collaborate. There needs to be a synergy between government agencies and the airlines.
Thank you very much, Wale. And we're going to run out of time and not have time for questions. So if we could be a little briefer, bearing in mind Wale's taken up half the half the session.
I'm so sorry.
Time.
I'm so passionate about aviation.
I know you are.
So
That's
sorry.
why everybody here is passionate as
Yeah.
well. So over to you, Dr. Falami. What do you think are the primary causes? We know there are lots of causes. What's the primary?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I will stay focused and I'll keep to your time. Firstly, I would like to congratulate you and Dr. Alex for putting together this forum so that we can have transparent conversations. Yeah, and I mean transparent conversations. However, Dr. Alex has killed the conversation, by with his initial presentation, by already reaching the conclusion or presenting the conclusion to us that airlines price for survival. So that conversation is already skewed. We understand, we are business people ourselves in downstream aviation, in the intermediation service, and we understand that no business is a charity. So before you go into business, you would have done your studies and you face the challenges that line of business faces. Now, to your point, right? To your point, who is responsible for airfares, whatever? Having spoken about Dr. Alex's presentation, he also made a very valid point. He made a very valid point that, seasonal fares, particularly in December, the price hike or whatever, is also due to weak return leg, which is understandable and which is a business decision and a business consideration that you ought to have. And that at that point, I want to go to your question here. It sets the distinction. It should be clear, right, that at seasonal during peak seasons like December, 18 government taxes are not responsible for the high fares. Yeah, 18 government taxes are definitely not responsible for the high fares in December. There are operational and business considerations that go into it. Who is responsible for the fare structure in aviation? I'll put it at airlines and government. Yeah, I'll put it at airlines and government. And I agree with Shadari that we need more conversations like this, and we need more collaboration. And when we put it at airlines and government, sometimes the public also think that we are also part of it, but we are not part of airfares construction. We just relate to the public. And when we put it at airlines and government, it is important to make a clear distinction between what government taxes are, right, and what airline imposed surcharges are. And I'll repeat myself. It is important, because and I'm happy that FCCPC is here. Yeah, it is important for the public to be properly educated, about what goes into fares construction, because a lot of times we reach a very hasty conclusion about multiple taxations, right? But we should, make that distinction clear. What are airline imposed charges and what are government taxes? If you look at the seasonal periods, it is the airline imposed charges that are responsible for the hikes. It is the airline imposed charges that are responsible for the hikes at seasonal times, particularly in December. Because it's very logical. Government taxes do not change. Government taxes do not change and do not vary with the season. So it is. So we should focus there. Dr. O'Brien made an assertion about 2-3 weeks ago, and I think that we shouldn't ignore it. That there are 18 government taxes on every domestic fare. You started a conversation, which is good. I think that what we need to do now as stakeholders, which is good, is for us to start to break down and to start to deconstruct what those fares mean. Having said, I am the biggest fan of Nigerian aviation. I am the biggest supporter of our domestic airlines. I will stop there so that I don't take more than 2 minutes.
Thank you very, very much. Yes, Alex killed the presentation with conclusions before we started. He was only supposed to give us a market context, not do the whole 2 hours in 5 minutes. But anyway, try and forget what Alex said at the very beginning.
He already made the conclusion.
I know that wasn't part of his
I think
remit, but
we need to go home.
I know. It's like, Alex, why are we here? What are we debating?
His conclusion was that airlines price for survival. That already skews the conversation.
We'll hear a bit about that because I'm going to give a little bit more context to it shortly. But let me just see if Michael, Director of Consumer Protection, is available. Michael, are you with us? Michael, oh, you are. Thank goodness. Busy man. No fights on social media right now, I take it. So, what do you think about the topic? So, causes of high fares. What's the primary reason, do you think?
Yeah. Thank you. And with profound apologies to everyone as well that I did not turn on my video. Since this meeting began, I've been to the airport 4 times, to resolve crisis. So I don't want, to distract everybody by having videos of me in transit like this. The conversation about airfares, aviation is an ecosystem, and every stakeholder has a role to play. So it's a matter that concerns everybody. At this point, we cannot point accusing fingers at just one party. Everybody. We could point fingers at everybody, really. But we must also have conversations about every single component that determines airfares. We will be approaching it the wrong way if we just offer a blanket narrative.
We lost you. We've lost him. Perhaps he will come back shortly. Must be an internet challenge. But we've got somebody representing the Executive Commissioner of FCCPC. So in a rare occurrence, we have airlines, we have travel agents, we have two competition or consumer protection people on here. So I'm going to welcome, and I am a butcherer of Nigerian names, but it's Ondaje Ijagu. Welcome.
Thank you very much, the host, and good morning, everyone. My name is Ondaje Ijagu. I work with the FCCPC as Director of Corporate Affairs, and I'm standing in for Mr. Louis Odion, the Executive Commissioner Operations. So I convey his apologies for his inability to personally attend. Looking at the issue of aviation, or rather airfare pricing,
I got cut off there. Oh, okay, someone else. Okay.
Yeah, we'll add you back shortly.
Okay, so looking at the issue of airfare pricing, I'd like to give first a caveat that unlike we are perceived out there, we do not control price in any way. We also do not assist operators in any way to set prices for their products or services. What we do essentially is to monitor the market to ensure that there is fairness in how operators are behaving. And that's actually a mandate enshrined in the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Act 2018. When we monitor the market, we look out for things like anti-competitive conduct. We also look for unfair practices that could harm consumers in any way. So these are the things we look out for. And we expect that when airlines fix their prices by themselves, or rather set their prices, because actually price fixing for us is also an offense under our act. And when we talk about price fixing, we talk about when there is collaboration among operators. More than a single operator would come together and then agree on what price to fix. So that is criminal under our law. But what we do essentially, like I said, is to monitor the market to ensure that markets operate fairly and there are no anti-competitive practices going on. And bringing it back home to the Nigerian aviation sector, how it's been. Yes, we also have an active investigation that is ongoing, so we won't be speaking so much to some of these issues in great details. But we can make a peripheral comment as to how we operate and then what we do in the marketplace. But like I said, we essentially do not in any way get involved in how much an operator charges. But let me also add that even while we just monitor, we are keen on ensuring that there is justice in how operators behave, economic justice, I would say, would. So I think since we have other issues to speak to, I would stop here from now. Then when we go into other aspects of this conversation, we'll be speaking more to the issues.
Thank you very much for that contribution. And before we move on, let's go back to Michael Achimugu.
Yeah, so I was saying that you cannot point fingers in just one direction. However, from the consumer's perspective, if government and the operators have explained that factors A, B, C, D, and E are responsible for the high airfares, then it should follow naturally that when items A, C, and E have experienced an improvement, it should also reflect, no matter how minute, in the airfares as well. And that is where I agree with that narrative. And that is where I say, until we have honest conversations about each component that determines airfares in Nigeria, we are going nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. That set us up very, very well. I'm not going to labor too much. We had specific questions we were going to ask the panelists, but some of them have answered them already. But one of the ones that I definitely want to hear is, actually, I'm just reading them. I think you've answered them all from that panel. So we've had all the answers for that session. Now, what I want to do is to give a bit more context in terms of the market. And so just want to take a few minutes to explain what I describe as the Nigerian aviation contraction loop. I'm doing this particular session on fares because there's been a lot of public debate around aviation in Nigeria focused on fares, whether fares are too high, who's responsible for them, and what should be done about them. But fares are an outcome, they're not the starting point. The total number of seats an airline has available to sell is what we call capacity. In Africa, and particularly in Nigeria, airlines are essentially selling one product, which is seats. Unlike other industries or even other airlines in other countries, there is very limited diversification of revenue. So the health of an airline and the price passengers see are heavily dependent on how many seats are actually available in the system. When capacity reduces, whether because aircraft are grounded, maintenance is delayed, parts are unavailable, or aircraft simply cannot be kept in service, that reduction alone is enough to trigger a contraction loop. Airlines operate with high fixed and operating costs. These costs are spread across available seats, what we call cost per available seat kilometre, CASK, or more simply, unit cost or cost per seat. Crucially, these costs are largely inelastic. they do not fall quickly when shocks occur. So even if you take an aircraft out of service, there are still ongoing costs that you have to pay for that aircraft. And sometimes it's additional costs due to the maintenance bill that you weren't potentially planning for. So when fewer seats are available and total costs do not fall at the same pace, those same costs are spread across fewer seats. The result is a higher cost per seat and therefore higher fares. Let me illustrate this very simply, because I've been talking about this for a few weeks, and I think some people like to hear the numbers a bit more to give them a bit of context. Excuse the background noise. I'm not sure what's going on. If total costs are $100 and an airline has 100 seats to sell, then the unit cost is $1 per seat. If that same $100 is spread across 66 seats, as we've had previously, the unit cost rises to about $1.51 per seat. Now, even if total costs fall, say from $100 to $90, but capacity falls further, the unit cost still rises. So $90 spread across 44 seats ends up being $2.05 per seat. So despite a reduction in total cost, the cost per seat increases because capacity has fallen faster. So before any margin is added, fares already need to rise simply to recover costs. So this is when we talk about defensive prices or cost recovery prices. But higher fares typically suppress demand, which we've seen in 2024, 2025, passenger numbers have been declining. When fewer passengers can afford to fly or are willing to commit to flying, demand weakens. When demand weakens, capacity becomes less viable. Aircraft are taken out of service or seats are taken out of service, frequencies are reduced or routes are suspended. That reduction in seats increases the unit cost again and fares move upwards once more. This is the contraction loop. Capacity falling, unit cost rising, fares increasing, demand weakening, capacity falling again. That loop will continue until one or two things happen. Either capacity increases, meaning more seats are available to spread costs for each airline who are operating, or underlying costs come down in a sustained way. Without either of these changes, the loop will persist. It's also important to say that simply adding more airlines does not automatically solve the problem. If the issues that cause capacity loss in the first place are not addressed, additional aircraft will not remain operational. To put this into context, in 2025 alone, we have seen roughly 44 aircraft flying, while around 79 remain grounded, according to the figures, which no one has a direct data repository, so we can only go by what is reported. So that may be wrong. Since 2014, Nigeria has added more airlines, yet at that time there were 90 active aircraft out of roughly about 126. But despite adding more airlines, we have got more operators today. We've ended up with fewer operational aircraft. So at that point, it becomes difficult to argue that something is wrong with every airline, which is why I think there is general consensus in the room. What this pattern suggests instead is a system level issue, one that repeatedly pushes capacity out of the market and makes higher fares an inevitable outcome. This is why focusing only on fares leads us to wrong conclusions. When attention stays fixed on price, passengers see, without understanding what is happening to capacity underneath and costs, higher fares may appear arbitrary, even unfair, but in reality, they are the logical outcome of the conditions the system is operating under. So the more important question is not simply why fares are high or who is to blame for them. The more important question is what keeps pushing capacity out of the system and what would need to change to keep it in. Because until that changes, fare outcomes will continue to look exactly as they do today. I'm a mum of 4. I don't like repeating myself. And when I look back on conversations I've had, interviews I've done, press releases we've issued, conversations that every consultant, every airline has been saying, we keep talking about the same things. We're having this series so that we can go from talk to action. So we want you know, because without change, fair outcomes will continue to look exactly as they do today. Because without the market, because not because the market is failing, but because it's responding rationally to the environment it's in. So the next session of panel rounds, I really want to focus on what needs to change. And Alex, I think you're going to take over questioning. I'll continue if you're stuck.
No, I can. I would like to direct the question to Mr. Folami. Good afternoon, sir. Can you hear me? Your audio is not, your audio is off.
And just before we get the response, can I just say to the audience, I can see that lots of questions are coming in. We're going to move to questions at 11:15.
Well, thank you very much for your issue, your speech essentially on taxes and surcharges. And that is why typically the traditional response is, oh, my fare is low and the surcharges are extremely high. But you do understand why this construction exists, which has to do primarily with taxation on the elements that you're applying to the fare. But to jump straight to a question, from your position at the point of sale, where do you see the biggest disconnect is between fares, how fares are constructed, and how they are understood? You have addressed that somewhat, but from your point of view, from the sales point of view.
Sorry, I didn't get you were breaking. Where do I think the biggest disconnect is?
Between, you've spoken to how you feel, what you feel about surcharges and the two, what we call the airfare against the surcharges. And I tried to explain, which I think you do understand, that there are taxation implications for the airlines in that construction. But beyond that, what do you think is the disconnection between how fares are constructed and how they are understood by the consumer?
I think it is the arbitrariness. And that's why I agree with the deconstruction and the breakdown, like the CA director has said. I think it is in the arbitrariness in the application of surcharges. A lot of times they are not clear. And let me tell you, because we interface with these tickets and Ticketmaster, yeah, and we have to interface with consumers. If you look at the peak period, for example, if you look at December, for example, I agree with your conversation. I agree with your presentation about weak return leg. I agree with that 100%. But if you look at the ticket, if you look at the mask of a ticket, yeah, in the peak period time, maybe December, and maybe an average time, maybe say August or September, that's a domestic ticket. You will find out that what is responsible for the hike are the airline imposed charges. That is YQYR. And that is why in our own community, we are calling for a deconstruction. And that is why, for example, when we make claims about multiple taxation, I don't want it to be ignored. Yeah, let us appraise and deconstruct. If you look at the ticket mask, yeah, if you compare that ticket mask in December now with what you find for January, February, you'll find out that the airline imposed charges have gone down. They've dipped by about 50%. That's why you get a one-way ticket for between 140, 120, and 150 now, unlike what it was in December. So it is the airline imposed surcharges that increase. And we believe that from our practice, because we are also trained, yeah, we believe that they are perhaps, yeah, no, let me not even go there. We will just recommend, yeah, a deconstruction and a breakdown.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Lastly, an advice I would like to give. Lastly, an advice I would like to give, because we are also practitioners. We are in between government, the consumer, that's the traveling public, and the airlines. And the airlines are our principal. And any serious person in downstream aviation understands why we need to make domestic airline operations successful in Nigeria. I would like to advise, just like best practice all over the world, yeah, when you know that we are approaching the peak seasons, allow advanced purchases. A lot of times, advanced purchases are not available on, on domestic ticket purchases. Yeah, allow me to buy my ticket like 3 or 4 or 5 months ahead of Christmas, and then for the latecomers, then whatever charges that are available then applies to them. So let me keep it there. I'm sorry for taking a bit more time than
I would like to add that you understand that transparency will be taking off the dress. And so we know what the aggregate fares are. It can be subcategorized in a number of ways. We'll come back. I would like to go to Wale. Can I go?
Just before we go to Wale, because Michael actually has to go. So Michael, do you want to say a few words before you depart? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've always viewed this topic from two perspectives. There's the airfares in December, and then, the general airfare situation for Nigerians. I've always said my position about the hikes in December is well documented and very public. I do not stand with the operators on that. My position will not change. Even if history has shown that even if everything else is taken care of and airfares reduce as operators demand, in December, the same hikes will still occur regardless of any other factor. Generally speaking, also, I disagree with Wole Soyinka, who said that government doesn't take aviation seriously. Maybe we are not at the level we are supposed to be, but I think that this government has been very supportive or shown willingness to support, in fact, much more than mere willingness to support the industry. Remember that the president has made aviation the center of his economic plans. Remember also how the Nigeria air situation was handled once the president came into office and Festus Keyamo SAN assumed office as the honorable minister. I think that the Nigeria air debacle ended in the way that domestic operators wanted it to end. That was in their favor, and that was government supporting the domestic airlines. I may also wish to refer you to the 5-point agenda of the honorable minister, where he spoke clearly about supporting domestic airlines. This would also point us to the fact that he personally, physically followed, supported, fought for Air Peace, a domestic operator, with regards to their Nigeria, UK flights. And so beyond that as well, they fly the Caribbean now too, and so many other routes opening up for domestic operators. Also remember that Air Peace, a domestic carrier, is more or less Nigeria's flag carrier at the moment. This is support. Long before this administration came into office, Nigerian Airlines did not have access to dry lease. The issues in the first place were caused by the operators themselves, if I have been taught right. Because, pardon whatever ignorance I may be speaking sometimes, I'm new in the industry compared to a lot of you, but I also do my homework sometimes. And I know that, whatever the issues were have been dealt with largely by this honorable minister, who being a lawyer, understands regulations and policies. And with the signing of the CTC practice direction, IDERA, and every other allied issue to that, largely the dry lease, wet lease situation has been resolved. When you look at these things, these issues, which have been some of the components of the larger conversation surrounding airfares, you'd expect that as these issues are being resolved one after the other, it should reflect, no matter how infinitesimally, with airfares. Because how are we saying to people for years now that the lack of access to dry lease is largely responsible for airfares? Now there's dry lease, airfares are going higher. Of course, there are other factors, which brings me to the communication style of the operators. I do not agree that the operators are communicating clearly enough. As it happens at the domestic terminals, when there are disruptions, that it always requires the intervention of the CAA, myself and my department, where it's always been down to lack of proper communication between air operators and passengers. I think that AON is also not communicating properly, even with government and other stakeholders. Take the recent conversations around airfares, which the NANTA president is speaking about, for instance. The AON, through some of its representatives, mentioned taxes as the reason for the hikes in December. I don't agree that was a fact. I don't agree that issue was communicated properly. I think that the more germane issues were the ones raised by Dr. Alex, where you see, I had a sit down with the AON spokesperson, who's also chairman for United, a perfect gentleman, and he broke these things down for me. And you see, my takeaway from that conversation was the narrative, the explanation offered to Nigerians over the December airfare hike should never have been about 18 taxes or the multiple taxation by government, because there were no hikes in any taxes at all in December. If the conversation about the empty flights returning from the southeast should have been the explanation, because this conversation requires honesty in totality if we want to truly resolve the issues. That said, from the CAA perspective, we are willing to continue to meet with the operators and discuss ways we can support, because we are partners in progress. We are not fighting each other. Whatever needs to be done from our side of things will get done. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak here, and I look forward to further conversations. Cindy, I must thank you and your team for bringing this back. It's amazing, and we look forward to positive outcomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Really can I really come in here, if you can allow me, because I also, apart from the fact that there's so much of Achimogu's stuff had to do with the operators, if you can allow me here. Thank you very much, Achimogu, and we appreciate your commitment and dedication to the industry and what you have been doing. There's no doubt you acknowledge that you are new, but I can tell you are learning with a jet speed. However, we also appreciate what the government is doing. We don't take it for granted, but there are a few facts to be clarified here. There have been a whole lot of work to get the obstacles before the operators and dry lays. But this work, we appreciate the minister. But let's have it on record that so far, we only have one single aircraft on dry lays, which has been with Air Peace. That just took place like 1 month or 2 months ago. So that wouldn't have had the expected effect. We're expecting that more will come because it takes time. When these things are removed, we have to wait on queue for airlines, for lessors to have free aircraft to place with us. So we're very hopeful that will come. And when it comes, obviously, it will affect our, it will reduce our operational costs, and definitely and surely it will be transferred to the travelers. I also want to let Dr. Folami respond to what he had said. You would do well so much on Christmas. In every part of the world, there are seasonal fairs. These seasonal fairs are not only in aviation, they're also in hotels. It might interest you to show that when that season comes, some people just operate in a season. If you go to some holiday resorts, the restaurants are open for summer. And it's in summer they make the money to pay their rents in winter, because in winter they're closed. However, for the operators and the airfare ticket in December, you've talked about regular season for 150,000. Average cost of this fare we're talking about is about 200,000 in December. So when you fly 180 capacity aircraft to Enugu or Anambra, and you come back with 2 passengers on 180 capacity, and you have to spread the cost per seat, you actually still at less than 150,000 on return ticket. since we're all in agreement that airfare tickets are calculated per available seat. So for us in the airline, no, I don't think any airline averages a yield more than 150,000 naira, no matter how much you sell your individual ticket. We have to take note of that. And for Achimogo, the director, the issue of operational cost for the airline has been there before Christmas. Our interest for costs for taxes and levies have been there for the past 2-3 years. It's beyond Christmas season. So this is not what we're talking about. Yes, we had this meeting. It's good that we established that communication, to bridge that communication gap so that we all know what each other is doing. But there in that meeting, I showed you a bill of over 1.5 billion naira. United Nigeria was billed by NCA alone, 1.5 billion naira from 1st of December to 31st of December. You guys can tell me, how much do I retain in my coffers? That's NCA alone for the volume of the voice. I show it to you. These are things we're talking about, with less to the government and more to the operators. And for some, I think Shadere gave statistics about the contribution of the airline to the GDP, less than 2 billion naira. Correct. But the other higher sectors that contributes to the GDP are only enabled by the airline operators. Aviation remains a catalyst. Without the airline operation, the oil sector that contributes over 80 to 90% will not function. Because the body I represent covers not only the passenger operators, it's also the helicopter services that support the oil industry. So if we are thinking of the attention and dedication to this sector, it can never be enough. The importance has not been properly realized. So I really think that the enlightenment we're talking about and discussion, there are enough enlightenments. Dr. Achimogu, we talked about this, but sometimes the passengers need only to hear what they want to hear. So my recommendation on all of these issues are that there is need for more enlightenment. I've recommended to NCA, to Ministry of Aviation, that we must have aviation have power. We don't just have to wait until we are responding to crises or issues. A lot of Nigerians need to know a whole lot more about aviation. For us as operators, we are just seeing ourselves as shop passengers. Cindy, if you know shop passengers, Aboro. Those are people who load vehicles and motor parks, because passengers have turned airports into motor parks. That's indecent. Activities that go on there in other parts of the world that are infractions to rules are treated as terrorism. But people do some of these things and get away with it. Achimogun is doing a lot of work in that direction. But I think really by and large, we still maintain that the airfare we charge is still one of the cheapest in the world, despite the fact that our operational costs and levies and taxes are highest in the world. It is just simply because we're very sensitive and concerned about the purchasing power. We are worried. We are agreed, we're in agreement that the benefit of operation, commercial benefit, is just about your yield, how many tickets you have, seats you're able to say, the patch load. We think that if the prices are reasonable, then we will be able, obviously, to have a better yield. And let me also tell you, for Dr. Falomi, who is talking about long-term purchase, we have it, because in the same aircraft we're talking about during the Christmas, there are people, this maximum fare is only about 20% of the ticket. Let's get it right, because we have progressive pricing, which is which is all controlled by the system, is computer generated. There are people still on that seat that bought their ticket earlier, maybe when the capacity is about 10 to 15%, they pay 100,000, 150,000. When it progresses to 200,000, 250,000, the only reason why it gets so noticed, and let me tell you also, for the records, that this inventory is permanent on the airline operators' cost inventory. We have this inventory from January to December. NCA can attest to that. Because before you charge, you must file the inventory to NCA. I know for United Nigeria, we did not file a new inventory for the last 6-7 months. So whatever you are buying is there. But if today, if in March or February, we're able to have 100% capacity, you will see tickets also at the same 400,000 or 250,000. So why it gets so rampant is that some destination during the Christmas, this period get 100%. And when it gets 100%, you have 10%, 15% of the topmost cost of the ticket. So you stay underneath, still have normal prices. And today we're talking about Christmas and February. Most of you may not know that from February, we practically fly empty because the market is low. The other option is that we say we won't lose, we fly at a loss. I have checked my capacity today. Some of the places averaging below 50%. And as experts in the industry, we know that if you're having 75 to 80% tax load, we are losing money. So we could now go on and lose money for the next 1 month. In other parts of the world, they ground the aircraft. And the only airlines that have the muscle to blade and sustain the injury continue to fly. And my economy of March, my economy of February, if I have to do my annual calculation, has to be factored in. And for Christ's sake, you have some financial obligations to the bank, which you must present your business plan and financial flow before you borrow money. So let us please understand this. So we need more understanding on how this works. Don't look at these operators as silos. And there's no way, we don't even have opportunity to be cartel to fix a price. Because like you said, I think that's Dr. Folame, Nigerians have options. They have option to go by road. They have option even not to fly or not to travel. Some people could not even afford. I know people, some of my relatives who did not come for Christmas because they did not afford the money to go by road. So this issue of economy is over there. So I really think that for us in aviation, like Shodare has said, yes, you have talked about good roads. If the roads get better, it's probably going to affect tax load. But I've also said that the biggest aviation market is America, having about $1.3 trillion into the GDP. But still, America has the best road network in the world. They have the best alternative transport system, which is train, sea, and everywhere. You see, they have the highest number of, the highest aviation activity internally. The biggest American airline is internal operator, not even the international operators. So by and large, these things are not rocket science. There will always be those who will prefer to travel by road, and there will always be those who will only travel by air. So for us in the industry, in conclusion, understand that we are offering services. We are not up against the government. We're not up against the travelers. And there is need to understand that we do make a lot of sacrifice. And that's where I want to leave it for now. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Can I speak from the FCCPC perspective on this quickly?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, thank you. First, I like to say that it was music to my ears when Mr. Chimugu spoke, because these are some of the things that I investigate in. Because if airfares would rise, abruptly, and then we are told that a number of factors occasioned that rise. If one of them is being shut down, definitely we want to investigate more into that. Because one of the reasons we were given for December rise in airfares was the fact that there were multiple taxations, and the fact that also the airlines had said that a whole lot was being paid to government. But if the sector regulator would speak as they have spoken, we are happy about it. And let me also add quickly that when we talk about uh, airfares and airline operation generally in Nigeria, the behavior of firms, the behavior of the airline operators would, or rather, it's quite implicated in whatever that occurs. Reason is that beginning from even um, when you want to book a flight, you will discover that the information there would be quite opaque. A number of times, you're booking a flight. If you book your flight, particularly for clients that are outside our immediate environment, you would see that a whole lot of things are listed as part of the charges. You have, if there is tax that you pay, if you obtain a ticket, you will see clearly the tax will be stated there. If there are other charges that you pay, you would also see those other charges there, and also the base fare clearly stated so that whoever is making this purchase will know that these are the various components of what I am paying for. But a situation where there is asymmetry of information largely, consumers definitely will begin to ask questions as to why certain things are happening, as to why fares are rising. Because, and the interface between the consumer and flying is the airline operators. Nobody, the government does not interface directly with the consumer in that respect. So whoever will be taking the hit definitely would be the operator himself. But a lot of times we don't get clarity in terms of airfares, even while we make our booking. So from beginning from the inception of trying to get on a flight, you begin to have issues. And then we have a situation where we have dominant players clearly who are there and they abuse to some extent, allegedly anyway, because from what we gather from consumers, it seemingly looks like there's an abuse of that position of a dominant player. And when we talk about dominance in this sense, dominance, the market could be segmented, and it's actually in segments. For instance, you could have the route to the southern part of Nigeria, particularly the southeast part of Nigeria, during festive periods. When we look at that, there are airlines that may clearly be said to be dominant players in that respect. And because, for instance, when you can exist and you have a captive consumer community that even if they want to, uh, even if they want alternatives they can't get. I listened to the MD when he spoke about people traveling, people have the option of traveling by road. Sometimes when we say some of these things, it looks like we are not sensitive to the concerns of Nigerians. I want to believe that a lot of Nigerians would like to travel by road, but for the security situation that we have in the country, that is why almost everybody is uh, getting to fly at all costs. So if we say, okay, and then when we are dominant players and we do not, people do not have alternatives, and then we behave like, look, because they do not have alternatives, we can do certain things the way we do them. And I'm being careful because, like I said, we're investigating, so we don't want to say so much. But let me say, for instance, we talked about maximum fare. And then the fact that this thing should graduate from maybe a particular time to the other. Definitely, when it comes to the festive periods, what we have seen is that The issue, maximum fare commences from the one that the ticket is available. And sometimes the airlines would even advertise a particular fare, and it's not accessible to the consumer at all. You try to book, make your booking, it leads you like you're going to get a very good fare, and then at checkout, it migrates to what you would call the maximum fare in that instance. We have a lot of complaints in those regards. And also the issue of capacity loss that the host talked about, and also the MD also made mention of. Yes, there could be capacity loss, but we're also surprised because as regulators, we'll be very happy to be educated in some of these areas. When you talk about capacity loss, I think what happens in other climes too is the fact that when there is capacity loss, or there's also the issue of capacity underutilization, like the MD mentioned. Capacity loss could occur. Yes, prices will definitely, we know it may have to go high. But when there's capacity underutilization, which is the flip side of capacity loss, consumers also still do not enjoy better fares. Because how would you, for instance, fly an aircraft from point A to B with half of the seats empty, and it doesn't in any way kind of prompt the airline operator to say, okay, look, maybe at this point, we could even get better fares for consumers. So
we're going to run out of time. Louis, we were supposed to have gone to Q&A 10 minutes ago. So I think we need to let, I know we need to let you respond.
Information, please. Information, point of information. Riyadh, the CPC guy, you may not be aware that the same aircraft that took 180 passengers to Enugu, Owerri, or Anambra at maybe 300,000, the same aircraft on return to Lagos or Abuja, you can buy a ticket on the same aircraft the same season at 80,000 naira. You can confirm that. The agent, you should tell less than 180,000 naira. You can buy a ticket for 70,000. What I'm trying to tell the CPC people, you are one of our big problems in the industry. Your ignorance in how things work exposes the airline operators and make them very vulnerable before the passengers. I had given my reasons after the comment of Achimogun. You did not even listen to it. What are you investigating? What capacity do you have? What information do you have?
Cindy,
you need to be tutored. You need to learn.
Cindy, can we please moderate these conversations? Can we please?
You are making the airlines very vulnerable.
Cindy, can you please moderate this conversation, please?
So please, what I'm trying to
do, we are here as stakeholders.
We are here, and everybody. This is a town. This is a town hall.
Please.
This is a town hall. I know this is a town hall. So
the airlines make themselves vulnerable.
If FCCP can say something, I think it's fair to let the airline respond. But we're only going to do 4 more minutes of this.
But let's
4 more minutes of this, and then we are moving on. Because part of the issue is FCCPC were not here from the beginning.
You were there when
they didn't hear the entire conversation.
CPC guy was talking about airlines being insensitive. You were there when they are talking about dominance.
Let's not go back on what people. Let's just move forward, please.
Made a topic like that.
Okay. Let's move forward.
I don't know what position we have to think that who gives you the capacity to know.
Part of the problem was FCCP were not here from the beginning.
Insensitive is uncalled for.
Let us calm.
Right. We're not going to agree. We're not going to agree here. So I think it's time for us to calm the question.
Let us calm.
Vulnerable.
Let's move on.
The airlines make themselves vulnerable.
I'm going to mute, guys. I'm going to mute you. Sorry.
Exactly. Just mute everybody.
I'm going to mute you. I'm going to mute you.
Mute everybody, please. Yeah.
Right. We are going to move to the audience because people have been
No,
here
no, no, no,
waiting
no.
to ask a question. So we're going
No,
to move
Cindy.
to the audience. I'm very sorry. Well, this is a series. This is not the only opportunity. Everybody will have a chance to speak. This is a 4-part series to begin with. The next one is going to be on delays and on-time performance. Thereafter, we're doing peak time chaos. Thereafter, we're doing ticket price breakdown. So we are not going to address all of those issues in this session today. So we all have got a lot of things to say on this topic. It is unfair for people to attack the airlines and for airlines not to respond. So I disagree that people should say what they like and then no one should respond. No one was stopping the FCCPC or NCAA when they said what they wanted to say. So I don't think that I should be responsible for moderating just the airlines. I've let everybody talk. And I'm not going to shut up the airlines when they want to respond to what people say. But having said that,
So Cindy,
I'm
disagree
going
with
to
you that
mute you as well. We're going
Cindy,
to
can
move.
I say something? You haven't said anything because when you wanted to have me, I was having problem with my
Yeah, I
connection.
know.
Yes, and
But we
maybe
do
just
need to
1
move
minute.
to the audience. So quickly, please, Wale.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. I think I need to respond to what Mr. Chimugu said. I never say that the government is not doing anything about the industry. If for any reason the government has done well, but what we're trying to say is that the government should do more. I won't sit here and clap for the government even when they have done fantastically well. We still need more. They still need to help the airlines. We still need a lot of things that can move this industry forward. And lastly, we talked about booking. Mr. Folami talks about, airlines closing their inventory for a very long time, which Professor Okonkwo said it's not true. I had a very bitter experience, and I think this is goes to most of the airlines because at times you cannot even book or buy your ticket 2, 3 months ahead, which shouldn't be done. I had an experience with an airline. I won't mention the airline, but it cut across about 3 or 4 airlines. I wanted to go to Abuja in February. I think the first week in January or February, they were telling me that they haven't opened the inventory. And I was asking myself that I can't buy ticket. What I suspect is that when it gets to that time, get very close to the time that you want to travel, maybe 1 month or 2 months, they begin to tell you that the ticket has gone up 200% or 100%. I think the AON should look at this and allow us. So the same thing also happened. In September, you find it, we found it extremely difficult to book a flight for November and December. So the AON should look at this, and a lot of people feel this is a strategy for the airlines to make money. Nobody is saying the airlines should not make money, but they should put a human face to it. So I'm also looking at how airlines can collaborate with each other. Professor Konkwo said the load factor now is very, very slow, that at times they go with 50 passenger, 40 passenger. And I begin to ask, what happened to the Spring Alliance that was muted by Air Peace and some other airlines about 3 or 4 weeks ago? Why can we not collaborate? Why can't the airlines collaborate? If you have 40 passengers, airline A has 40 passengers, airline B has 30 passengers, why must they go individually? Why can't they collaborate to say, okay, let me put my 40 passenger in your 50 passenger aircraft so that everybody goes and share this money? And the former DG of NCA has talked about this, that if this thing could work among the various banks we have, the various financial institutions that we have, why is it very difficult for airlines to have the same thing? I remember the other time, Ibom Air and
Wale,
Ghana
you are
were trying.
exceeding your time allowance.
Okay,
Again,
thank you. Thank you
you
very much. Thank
started
you.
off exceeding and you want to continue exceeding. Wale, I'm
Okay,
giving you
it's
a
okay.
red card. Hang
Accepted,
on,
accepted, accepted.
hang on, Professor, you're muted, but just briefly, unmute yourself briefly. Professor, you're muted. You are muted.
Sydney,
Yeah.
I want to give answers to some questions he asked.
Yeah, but please briefly, briefly.
Yes, to start with, Wale,
So,
the airlines may not open their portal when they want to buy, not because that's what they want to do. It's not for the reason you said. By rule, regulatory requirement, you don't have to open your portal to offer inventory for aircraft that is not in your off-spec. If I, for instance, United Nigeria is waiting for SMI to start operating my route in December, this SMI is probably coming to Nigeria middle November. Until it arrives in Nigeria, until it's inspected by NCA, until it's in my off-spec, can't offer any tickets to it. So that is the reason. So those periods you think you can buy a ticket in January for December, we don't have that latitude in Nigeria to have 100 aircraft that is there we can sell all season. Some of these things, as you may know, we bring in this SMI for the season and they go at the end of March. Most of the operators will do that. So you can't offer what you don't have. When you do that, we are violating NCA rules. So sometimes people sit back and even decide a business model for the airlines. And then when it is the time for the lower passengers, I take, for instance, Anambra Airport. The only airline that fly to Anambra is APIS and United Nigeria. If you have your passengers to lift and United Nigeria does not have a flight that day, what do you do? And if APIS is operating 100, it may be E1, E2 that has about 100 passengers or 120, and I have A320 that has 70 passengers, they have 70 passengers. The combination of those is already over 100% of E2. So there are a whole lot of factors that are there, which I think more education we have. And because people do not know these things, they blame the airlines. So I don't think that it's fair to say airlines block their portal because they want to make money. Airline is free to offer their ticket, and you are free to buy or you don't buy. You don't have to wait. And we have just said exactly that this period, this ticket is progressive. If the portals are open, if you get in 10%, 15%, you buy lower when it gets to 80, 90%. So I still think that this is what it is. And for instance, you go to the portal, and what you see in March for December is 40, is the maximum. Then you don't have the back end of the airline. Maybe at that point, other people had rushed before you and got up to 90%. And at 90%, then you get to the maximum fare. There's nothing, if you buy certain day, for those going to America now, for World Cup, if you go to the World, so some of the airlines, those who are going to the World Cup, they must have cleared the tickets for July, August, during the World Cup period, June, July. Because they are not available or they're big. You wouldn't say the airline blocks it.
This flight
so
will
that's what I just said.
And arrive
so
on time. We need to move on because we are landing at 12 o'clock. So please, before we go on to audience questions, there's a number of comments. So prepare yourselves for your responses, but I'm just going to go through the comments first before we go to questions. Right, that's a question without a question mark. I'll come back to you. So someone says, rather than borrowing, so this is Umar, rather than borrowing from commercial banks with usually high interest rates, it's high time airline companies and all stakeholders in the industry come together to explore cheaper and more favorable financing options available locally and internationally, I believe. The assumption that airlines and government are not doing that, and even the commercial banks are doing it. I think part of the problem is people who are not following everything that's going on in the industry, and so they jump into conclusions. I've been with the Nigerian delegation when they went to Dublin and were speaking to banks with the Nigerian banks, looking for how they're going to reduce not just the cost of the aircraft, but how to reduce the cost of the commercial loans, because most of Nigerian banks are actually foreign banks as well. Some of them are set up in Europe and some in other African countries that got lower interest rates. So the assumption that people are sitting there doing nothing whilst high interest rates are happening, I think I just want to correct that. Yes, this will be uploaded on YouTube eventually. That's just someone saying that's this. The issue of cancelling flights that have been booked in advance, then compelling passengers to pay new fares should also be looked at. So perhaps we will have a session looking particularly about scheduling and booking and that. We're not going to cover that today. And someone says there's a lot of ambiguity and miscommunication from the airlines on the issue of airfares, quality of service, cancelled, rescheduled flights, and other matters. We tour operators are also feeling the negative impact. It's becoming more difficult to arrange tours for customers who wish to fly. So thank you for your comment. And that was a comment by Emmanuel. I can't see the surname. And Mrs. B says, I beg to disagree with Mr. Professor Okonkwo. Passengers are customers and they don't just need to hear whatever they want to hear, but to hear the honest truth. Like Mr. Michael just said, just like in any ideal situation and developed country, the aviation sector in Nigeria is not a sector that requires rocket science to operate effectively. It is carrying passengers just like any other continent and linked to any airport like any other continent globally. So whatever we are talking about in this town hall discussion just needs to be considered honestly, respecting, just as has been said by Mr. Michael, we are all concerned and collectively responsible. We all are collective stakeholders at various levels, passengers, even with options or not. It's not just about passengers having options or not, it's about issues raised, sector operating to its highest expected capacity, honestly, design system effectiveness, operators, airlines, said with all due respect and recognizing all effort. I'm going to respond to that because the interesting thing is, whilst you talk about system, you still throw it back onto the airlines who are the operators. So I think that, and then looking at continentally or globally, you don't need to look too far to see that Nigeria is not operating at economies of scale anywhere. It's not just the airlines, it's the airports, it's everything. So until we have economies of scale, until we have reliable services from ground handlers, from fuelers, from airports, from everybody, we will not get flights operating at economies of scale. So it takes a village to run an aviation ecosystem. And that's why we decided to have an open forum, Aviation Town Hall, where lots of different participants get a chance to talk. And then that's another question which we'll come back to. Right, so those are the comments. And then we've got questions. We do have Akin Oluteru, who has asked to speak. So I'm going to invite him to talk. So he will be able to speak to us. And you have joined us on stage.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Good morning, everybody. Great to have all the panelists. And thank you for organizing this. I just want to put in some words on this. Airfares, generally, Christmas and over New Year, it's always a big deal anywhere in the world. It's not just down to the airlines. Even hotels are more expensive during Christmas and New Year. Let's first have that at the back of our mind. It's like going to Dubai during Ramadan. You pay hotels are extremely cheap compared to peak season. So this is normal in any business you do. Go back to why do airfares expensive in Nigeria? We have so many issues. And why I really wanted to chip in is because all the speakers have not really hit some things which I said, let me add to this. Maintenance is a big deal all over the world, especially in Nigeria. But before that, airlines in Nigeria are faced with two major problems. One, Forex. It's an issue. In America, you sell tickets in Naira, in dollars, all your bills are paid in dollars. In Nigeria, you sell tickets in Naira, your bills, 90% of your bills are Forex. In Europe, you sell tickets in Euro, all your bills are settled in Euro. So Nigeria operators, one, are exposed to that. That's one disadvantage. Number two, cost of funds is huge. 30%, 35%. I don't know how many businesses can survive on that. We're not the only one. Even the manufacturers are crying. Interest rates are high. There is no business set up as charity. It's a very serious matter that if we really want things to work better for us, we need to work on this interest rate. Now, importation of spares. I don't know if people have taken notice of this. Most scheduled operators in Nigeria today, they have one aircraft part, and they use it for spares. Because importation of spares is a problem. One, you are dealing with the OEM or the third-party companies. Number two, you're worrying about transferring money to them. Today, bank will say, we've done the transfer. Tomorrow, we haven't seen it. You go back and forth, you've lost 2-3 days. Okay, you get the part, they ship it. Then customs hold your parts. Do we really understand the customs? Do they really understand AOG? This is the only point I've seen that AOG doesn't mean anything. AOG means aircraft on ground. Let that spare go now because the aircraft is waiting. So there's a huge downtime and aircraft turnaround. I've never heard of anybody talking about ground handling companies.
We're going to be talking about them in the next session.
Thank you. They influence aircraft. They influence turnaround time. Aircraft is docked, and sometimes it takes 15-20 minutes just to bring passenger steps. All this affect the profitability of the airline at the end of the day. Now, that takes me down to aircraft utilization. Airport infrastructure. They affect aircraft utilization.
You got 1 more minute.
Yes, thank you. And ICAO Annex 9 on facilitation. 7 a.m. departure at the GAT. How long does it take passenger to get to the plane? Cost of operation. I've explained that. Currency, country risk, insurance, foreign direct investment, because of the country risk, is a big deal. Taxes. Yes, we talk of taxes. People will say, why will I can buy ticket from London to Paris, which is an international flight, for $25. It is impossible in Nigeria because the PSC, passenger service charge, on Nigerian international is $100 to FAN. You have the VAT now being introduced. You have the ticket sales charge, which is 5%. You have the 20% security, $20 security. Now you have the API. So by the time you aggregate all this, the starting point is about $250 just to go international. So that's let me quickly add. Another thing is regulatory requirement. It's still an issue. I know the current DG didn't do the right regulation. We have a new sheriff this time, but I believe we can look at that current regulation. Aircraft of 20 years old. Just give me 30 seconds, please. 20 years, 22-year ban. Aircraft cost is still there. It's still part of the cost for the operators. So if I have to bring in a 10, 12-year-old, it's going to cost more than bringing 23-year-old aircraft to Nigeria. So that adds to the cost of operations in Nigeria. So if we can review that, now we're talking about $300 per helicopter landing in Nigeria. Whether we like it or not, that cost, whether it's AOM paying or the oil and gas company paying, is still a cost to the consumer, which is Nigeria in this case. Because you have about 30 helicopters flying in Nigeria, $300 per landing. Each helicopter does about 10 landings a day. That gives you $3,000 per helicopter. Gives you about $90,000 per day. Gives you about $32 million a year.
Okay, I am going to have to stop you because we've got a lot of questions in the chat and other people want to speak. Yeah. Go for
Cindy,
it.
just quickly. I'm sorry, I'll have to leave now for another pre-scheduled meeting. I thank you for this meeting. I'll talk to you afterwards. I would also like to inform everybody, everybody on this call, that NANTA will be 50 in April, and we will extend invites to all. Professor Obiora, definitely we are coming to see you in the office, yeah? As one of the captains of the industry. So
I think I'll be joining as referee.
And I'll see you guys later. Yes, yes, you'll be joining in. I will probably have a panel session like this there. So thank you for putting this together. Thank you for all the participants. I wish you all a
Thank
good
you
day.
so much. Thank you so much. See you soon. Okay. Let me because we have got 12 minutes left of this session, so I want to go through some of the questions. I'm not going to, some of them I can just get rid of quickly. So Uma Edemeka says, Dr. Alex said that cost influences airfare the most. Your data shows that fuel makes up 38% of costs, but evidence from my research showed that flight times influence fuel consumption the most. Hence, the flight times should be taken into consideration in determining airfares because operating costs are fairly stable per flight. So this is directed to Alex. Do you want to respond?
I believe I answered the question by saying that it's the cost per seat per mile. And so that addresses his question around miles and fuel costs. So, but it is not just fuel, it's everything that goes into the operation, including the cost of the flight delays, the number of aircrafts that are on ground, the operating cost. We always tend to forget the operating cost of the airline. So the larger the airline, the more people in HR, the more engineers, the more pilots. All of these things add to the cost of the operation of the airline, which adds to the cost of the seat. So while we may laser focus on fuel cost, in reality, there are so many cost components that I have continued to adjust my figures around, but fuel stands out quite there. But fuel will always be a component per mile across the board because the seat cost is per mile. Thank you.
Okay, so in addition to that, Dr. Alex, you did a good job on those statistics. But unfortunately, in our own climb here, sometimes we get the aviation cost jump more than 40% sometimes. And obviously it depends from aircraft to aircraft. But another monster that people may not have heard that is hitting the aviation industry now is the pilots. In the last 1 month, 2 months, there have been a very strong tension within the flying, the pilots. A lot of, pilot job, if you are good and you have a certification, you can fly anywhere in the world. Where now, as much as we sell our ticket in Naira and this way, as at today, we're almost coming to the point from this January of paying our pilots the same amount that are being paid flying in London or in America. Because if you don't pay them, you lose them. So, and this is talking about almost about 40 to 50% high in their salary. This is the real situation. And at the end of the day, this is also have to be factored in. All right. And then in terms of, there was a question on delay and on-time departure. Beyond talking on the tourists, I give you two scenarios. We've been talking about insurance issue. We, United Nigeria Airlines, is known in the insurance industry, bought 2 engines from Rolls-Royce. These engines were booked timely enough to meet the time the cycles of our existing engine will expire. We've paid fully for over 2 months. We have not taken the delivery of the engine because we're going front and back with our Rolls-Royce on insurance. We have involved all the insurance people we know in Nigeria and all the insurance people we know in the Western world. If they will release the engine, it's today. Now, last 2 weeks, we got a bed strike. We are taking off from one of the airports, landed in Lagos. We saw some particles of bed issues. What do you have to do? You have to ground the aircraft. Physical inspection was made. Nothing was seen. But because it was engine and you saw that in the blades, you have to do boroscope. On A320, we don't have equipment and capacity to do the boroscope here. 2 options: ferry the aircraft out of Nigeria, huge cost, or flying the expert. To arrange for the expert to come in to do the boroscope 1 week. At the end of the day, the engine was good. We could fly, but 1 week lost. It is happening so because regulation is tough. We are happy about it. Our people don't know what we are sacrificing for safety. We wouldn't fly that aircraft. And when I say that people want to hear what they want to hear, is that you could tell them this aircraft is supposed to make their trip. It's on ground, it cannot fly. They will block the road and say it must fly. So what do you want me to
everything
say? These are the two
Victor
scenarios
mentioned
of
is in that presentation.
Yeah. I think, Alex, I think we need to make your presentation available to people because I don't know what was happening during your presentation. I think some of the people maybe who were in the chat weren't here at the time. So I think we need to make your presentation available to people. The recording will be available, but I think the slides would also be useful for people to see. We've got some questions here, but they're asking specifically about individual airlines. So Captain Eric says, can we have some reasons why we have airlines such as IBOM and Air Peace maintaining fares at a premium with rapid minute fare changes while those of United Airlines, Rano, and a few others are usually reasonable, stable all year round? We haven't got those airlines here, so I don't know whether we are in a position to even answer that. And I also don't know whether it's factually true. I like to deal with evidence. So I'm not sure whether we can answer that question here. AON?
Well, I like you said, I need facts to be able to establish that. But as far as I'm concerned, all the operators are following their regulations, requirements, and I'm not aware of that. The person, we have also had other people saying that United Nigeria Airfare is high. So we need more of evidence to prove that. But I don't think there is a very, very intentional thing in mind to do that. So
I think I'll add something important here. It points to the fact that if you have that variation, and then it should be of particular interest to the FCCPC to show that there's no meeting between airlines to establish baseline fares and that it's happening independently. And that is what's supposed to happen in a properly functioning marketplace.
Well, I've addressed that issue because, the airlines operate in the same operational environment. Their operational costs are the same. So there is every tendency that when they come up with their cost per flight, per hour, per destination, they might look similar. But definitely, I've said in my comment that even the airlines do not have opportunity to do a cartel. A cartel is where you have monopoly of the use of your service. All right. That was actually when I used the issue of option. If airlines decide to hide their ticket, people might decide not to fly and we're out of business. Monopoly of such nature is applicable when people don't have option, so I don't think that's an issue. So let the Consumer Protection Board investigate all they can. They will obviously
can I just get a few more?
Cindy, just to add to this, I think this is a departure from what happened the other time. I think there was price fixing, I think about 3 or 4 years when the AON had a meeting and they announced that airfare was going to be 50,000 naira then. So it was collusion, a clear case of collusion, a clear case of price fixing. I'm referring to what happened about 3 or 4 years ago.
But we are in 2026
It may not necessarily be until airlines hold a meeting that they could be price fixing. They could be signaling of all kinds. But let me, making our parting remark, just say quickly that while we talk about the hard infrastructure, let us also talk about the soft infrastructure, essentially customer service. We have situations where people undergo all sorts of torture because the airlines don't make their customer service available to consumers. We have flights canceled. It is required that when those kind of things happen, you get your fare returned, refunded almost immediately, but we don't get that for a couple of weeks and months on end. It continues to linger. We also have situations where the call, consumers are unable to make calls to. Yes.
Panel, we seem to have gone off topic completely here, so I'm going to stop you. The question was to do with the airlines, different fares for different airlines. So that's the question.
These are related. For instance,
issue
of customer service is related. If, for instance, you have issues with battling with your airfare and certain things, you would require the customer service to sort.
But this is not the answer to the question.
You don't get
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to mute you because I actually want that person to get an answer to the question. So I'm going to mute you. Sorry. So let me just say, as nobody else is saying it, the every airline in Nigeria has got a different cost base. They hardly operate in the same fleet. The number of seats in one aircraft is not the same as the number of seats in another aircraft. So if you're flying like a 50-seater aircraft or you're flying a 120-seater aircraft, you can't expect the fares to be the same. The size of the operations, the number of aircraft they have, whether they own aircraft which cost $3 million or they own aircraft which cost them, hundreds of millions of dollars, they're going to have a different cost base. So there isn't a static cost base. Yes, they're operating within the same environment, but every airline within that environment are making commercial decisions, which is setting their costs differently to others. So it's not true just because you're operating in the same environment on the same route, your costs should be the same. And that's where, when we had this issue of a fixed fee, I think I was one of the #1 people saying, but this doesn't make any sense. How can somebody with a 100-seat aircraft and someone with 50-seat aircraft be charging the same fare? So I think that's really what I want to say on that. And then we do need to move on. And I want us to move forward and not be going back. We've got, we're going to end up overrunning because there are some people who've had questions here since 10 o'clock. So I want to just grab those. And Chris Emejiru has asked, what role can establishing domestic MROs play in creating a more efficient aviation industry in Nigeria? I think you've answered your own question, basically. An MRO, domestic MROs, will create a more efficient industry in Nigeria, because if the aircraft don't have to be ferried overseas, that's saving costs. And if we've got a domestic MRO, we might have more local parts available. So it will lead to efficiencies, less time, less downtime, less costs, less overall costs in terms of the ferrying and labor costs of internationals. So I'm going to just answer that. He's asked a question: what are the bottlenecks that prevent high fares from becoming lower, especially in West Africa? That question I'm going to give to the panelists, and this is going to be, because this is the nub of it. What do we need to do to reduce fares lower in Nigeria? So in 1 minute each, please answer that question. And we're going to start. Who hasn't spoken much? Let's
Wale
see.
hasn't.
Yeah, Wale.
Please take the question again. I think it was breaking.
Yeah.
When, I didn't.
What bottlenecks prevent? So basically, he's asking what bottlenecks prevent high fares from becoming lower. And we started this session by asking the question: what needs to change for fares to become lower in Nigeria? So that let's get back on topic.
Okay, I think the cost of operation also has to be reduced. I keep on saying the government will still need to do more. The minister has done well by helping the airline. I think this is the minister that I've seen that has done tremendously for the airline, including the CA. But like someone said, we need to look at deconstruct these taxes, because most times the airlines hide under high taxes to say, okay, they want to increase them first.
We'll be looking at taxes in one of the
yes,
sessions.
we need to, exactly, we need to look at it.
Yeah,
so
we
really
will be. We will be.
What they are paying for. Is it really 18 taxes? We need to look at
we're going to come on that. That's one of the topics of the series. So if that's all you've got to say, let's go to
what I got to
Professor Okonkwo. What needs to happen to lower fares in Nigeria?
Well, I've said this over and over again. It might not be a 1 minute thing. It should be
You should
series
be
of
able to do it in 1
sessions.
minute now.
Yeah, but however, from the side of the operators, certain operational costs that are not dependent on us have to be looked into. We still maintain the taxes. They constitute greater percent of our expenses. The agencies make money more than we do. And we also think that we've been asking for government to have a special window of borrowing for the airlines, not the grant, single unit. It is available for some of these special sectors in Nigeria, like the agriculture. With that in place, let's have on record that the level of resilience among the operators we have today has been really, really very, very awesome. Almost all the operators survived COVID-19 era without any support from the government, little or no support from the government. So what it means that with a little bit of push, we can go places. We still have market to capture. We are losing a whole lot in the market space, and we really think that this is what we need. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And final words from FCCPC on what needs to happen for airfares to be lower in Nigeria.
Yes, from our perspective, there has to be more competition, and competition. And in that case, we're talking about easier entry for airlines, particularly on busy routes. We're also saying there should be no collaboration of any kind when it comes to setting your price. Let competition determine. We are operating a market economy, and then there should be fair rules for consumers. And we must also, the airlines, open our inventories for cheaper flights. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And final words, Alex? Oh, you are muted. You were rowdy.
Yeah, I was muted. And it's been a very interesting session. I'd like to thank every one of the panelists for their participation and their input into this process. It's the first of a series. We'll continue to have these engagements and these discussions, and all for a better industry. Affordability is not magic. We have to do the real things. We have to study what those that have achieved it have done, like India, and then come back and make more people fly. Let us double the flying numbers, and everything should get better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you so much for co-hosting this event. This discussion has really shown that airfares are not the result of a single decision of a single actor, even, within different airlines. Even from the audience, we've heard there's variances in prices. They reflect how the entire aviation system currently operates: capacity, cost, demand, regulation, consumer, all interacting at the same time. What's important is that this means outcomes are not fixed. If the condition of the systems change, fair outcomes can change. And throughout this session, we've heard clearly that improving outcomes will not come from focusing pressure on just one part of the value chain alone. It requires alignment across airlines, regulators, intermediaries, and policy, each acting within their profitable role. Our objective in hosting these town halls is to move beyond debate and toward practical shifts that are grounded in how aviation actually works. Not quick fixes, not slogans, but changes that are realistic, sustainable, and evidence-based. The question now is not whether improvement is possible. We know it is. It is which conditions are most actionable and how we begin to change them together. We will continue this conversation in future aviation town halls in slightly different ways, including upcoming sessions on on-time performance, capacity, peak time congestion, and ticket transparency. Each session will build on the last. Thank you very much to our panelists for their candor and to everybody who joined and contributed today. And I know that we've got some questions which we haven't had time to answer in the session, but if you want to email info@averocapital.com, ask your questions, we will provide answers as much as we can, and we will send you the Alex's presentation as well. So email info@ averocapital.com. You can see the spelling of Avero up in our backgrounds. So thank you, everybody, and looking forward to continuing the work with you. And the next session will be in a month's time. So we will set up a link for that very soon. Thank you, everybody. And over and out. We have landed. Late. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Almost
Thank
on
you.
time. Almost with perfect OT.
Almost on time is late. We must do better. This is aviation after all. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Cindy.
Bye-bye.
Okay,
Bye,
bye.
Dr.